UK Crime Book Club. We are live. Thank you for joining us for our thrillers panel. We have the lovely Jude O'Reilly, JD Kirk and Bill Todd with us. And I'm going to ask you all to say hello and introduce yourselves. So Jude, do you want to go first?
Hello, my name's Jude O'Reilly. It's been known as Judith O'Reilly. I've written a couple of thrillers. Today, another one out in October. Really pleased to be here.
And we're really thrilled to have you. JD?
Hello, I am JD Kirk, also known as Barry Hutchison, which is my real name. I write the DCI Logan series. There are 13 books in that series so far. Book 14, which I have a copy of here, comes out in about 10 days' time. And I also write the Robert Hoon thriller series, which is a spin-off from this series. I should say as well today that I have really bad hay fever. I look like I'm emotionally distraught to be here, but I'm not. I'm genuinely happy to be here, but my hay fever has kicked off something chronic today.
Honestly, didn't notice the hay fever. Just thought you looked happy, so we'll just go with genuinely thrilled to be here.
Yeah, just tears of joy.
And Bill.
All right, my name's Bill Todd. I've written 7 thrillers featuring Danny Lancaster, who's an ex-soldier turned investigator, of which this is one. And yeah, as I said, there's a Barry suffering from hay fever. I managed to cut my throat this morning with an electric razor, so it's getting
more extreme.
Jude, have you got any injuries? Because I also cut myself cooking twice yesterday.
All right.
God. Are you saying the interview is cursed? That's terrible. I'm worried. Yeah. Like my book, Curse the Day.
Well, touch wood, you'll be absolutely fine. Yes, always the head and always the shelf in that order. Not superstitious at all. Right. So let's kick off with what to you makes a thriller? What are the key elements of a thriller and what do you always have in mind as you are writing? So Jude, let's go to you first.
Well, the key elements of a thriller. Well, I like it to be page-turny. So I think you start on the journey and then you literally want to keep the tension going. And there's this thing called escalating tension. So if you get a chance to kind of ramp it up, you ramp it up. And you have to have jeopardy so that, ideally one person's life is at stake or lots of people's lives are at stake or moral integrity is at stake or the future of the country or whatever. I think you've got to have a good, strong hero, which, obviously can be a woman. And also with a thriller, that hero, in a way, like an action man, is a bit of a trope. But you have to make them sufficiently different that people don't feel they've read them before. So I would say you want to get on the ride and you want to make it fast and hard.
I like that. JD?
Yeah, I would say much the same. I think for me it's about kind of creating a character that people will care about and then doing increasingly terrible things to that character. And in a kind of relentless way, it is that momentum, like Jude's saying, it's that momentum of terrible thing after terrible thing happening or exciting thing revealed, but something has to be happening all the time. And yeah, I think it's the key is to have characters that people don't want bad things to happen to. And then when you do bad things, that naturally creates a tension that keeps them reading.
Bill?
Well, I think Judith Barry covered it, really. I think obviously you need a building sense of pressure, carrot dangling, and speed as well, I think. Not obviously ridiculously fast, but it needs, as Judith said, you have to get people turning pages. One thing I was interested in, Judith mentioned, was about the action hero trope. As I mentioned in the introduction, my main character, Danny Lancaster, is an ex-soldier wounded in Afghanistan who then becomes an investigator. And a lot of his problems are adapting from a very rigid, organised military life back into civilian life. And the first book's over 10 years old now. And although I'm working on another one, I'm sort of slightly worried that obviously things have changed in the last 10 years. And whereas, in the same way that, the Bond movies have, he's not Sean Connery anymore. He's a lot more touchy-feely than he used to be. And with my main character, it's quite difficult to do that and maintain the central elements of the character. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I'm sort of finding it a bit of a struggle at the moment.
I think one of the problems when you're writing an action hero in a series is, you know, your character is supposed to grow and learn within a book. So they start one way and then they end a different way. But when you're writing a series, it's quite hard to get that growth. So like Lee Charles Jack Reacher kind of, you know, butts that trend. I'd say doesn't grow because he doesn't have to. He's kind of monolith at the center of the book. But there is always that tension because you need change, you know, within the thriller some way, somehow. Yeah.
What I would also say, Bill, to that is, Jude, sorry, could you hold up that book of mine that you had a minute ago, that Northwind that you, because I don't have a copy here. This book here, Bill, the main character in that is ex-military. He's a horrifying human being, and people seem to enjoy reading about him. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Right, well, that's helpful.
Yeah, mine's ex-military as well, and also wounded. You kind of need that wound to make them vulnerable and interesting, and there's supposed to be an external wound and an internal wound. But I think with ex-military, you kind of then get a hero who's capable, but capable of violence, obviously, and action and decision making. But also you kind of immediately associate them with good, you know, which I don't know, maybe that's naive of me, but you just assume that they are heroic, you know, as in a warrior, and that they're going to make the right decisions and the right calls, and they're going to be prepared to put themselves in peril. And obviously, you know, we went through the Gulf War, etc. That feeds into the zeitgeist, and you know that informs our writing, I think.
Yeah.
And alongside that, there is a humour, and often a dark humour. As you know, if you're talking about the military, you're talking about people with extremes of personality. They're used to extreme situations. Their reaction is probably going to be more extreme than, you know, the average civvy on the street, because they've had a heightened experience. So how do you weave in humour just to kind of balance the whole book? Because you all do it effectively. So how does that come about?
Well, I never intended the books to be funny at all. My books were supposed to be deadly serious. I wrote kind of comedy novels for about 12 years prior to writing crime, and I thought I'm finally going to write something really serious. And about midway through the first sentence of the first DCI Logan book, that just fell apart, and it suddenly became part comedy and part sort of thriller and part crime fiction. Well, all crime fiction, but part comedy as well. And I think a big part of that is that comedy is a great survival mechanism. You know, people that deal with the kind of, you know, the worst things imaginable, people that work in the front line of the emergency services or that sort of thing, the things they see would otherwise, I think, mess you up quite badly and traumatize you quite badly. So they develop that sense of humor as a shield. And a way of diffusing that kind of tension. So all the comedy in my books generally comes from characters interacting and the sort of the hierarchy of those characters and who's kind of picking on who. And they're all very fond of each other, but there's that sort of, in any workplace or any close group of friends, there's always that sort of hierarchy, and some are picking on others and some are laughing at their expense and vice versa. And so all the humor comes from the characters in my books. That's and generally, again, it's putting characters through kind of unpleasant things, but things which might not necessarily be life threatening. You know, there's a point in one of my books where a character called Tyler, who's kind of the young detective constable, gets trapped on a bridge with a steam train approaching and has to run off that bridge. Now, there's never any danger that he's going to die at that point. You know what I mean? But it's an unfortunate situation to find yourself in, and there was a lot of comedy to be milked out of that, both at the time and in his reaction afterwards, and in his colleagues' reaction to how he reacted, and so it's very character driven.
Right. Yes, I think the point about the humour as a shield is a good one. And obviously, I mean, people with military or emergency services background, I mean, obviously have the capacity in a situation to boil it down to its essentials, whereas civilians might be more distracted. I mean, I think I've been lucky in that when I'm writing Danny and it's going well, I usually think it's going well if he's writing his own gags with wisecracks. You know, sometimes he will go off on a tangent, and I tend to go with him because he knows what he's doing. And it seems to work. It doesn't happen all the time, but
I think with humour though, you've got to be careful because I've got like a sidekick character, Fang Fang Yu, who's 14, 15 in the books, and she's a genius. So she's way cleverer than my hero, Michael North, and you know she's always putting him down. So that's where my humour comes from. But you know, James Patterson says you've got to be really careful with humour because if you have like wound the reader up so that there's a lot of tension, you know, they're staying up late to read another chapter and another chapter. The danger with humour, if you go OTT, is that they go, oh, that's really funny. And that's it. They're kind of they're off the ride and they are back in reality and not in your world anymore. You know, I think it's a good thing to have on the page, but you have to be careful with it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a balance.
Yeah, used sparingly, I think.
Yeah.
We've got an awful lot of hellos and comments.
All right.
Somebody's waving at Barry from down under. Penny Willow is waving.
Oh, hello, Penny.
From down under.
Hello, Penny.
So we've got lots of people watching, and Kaz Master wants to know if we're new to reading your books, where is a good place to start? So let's tell everyone what to go and look for. So Jude, do you want to go first?
Mine's easy because I've only got 2 out so far, unless they'd like to start with my memoirs. Yeah, so mine's an easy one. I don't know with JD and Bill, but certainly when you're writing a series, the idea is people can start anywhere. So the stories are, you know, little worlds in themselves. And then even if you start on book, you know, 2 or 3, you know, you're supposed to like it enough to want to go back to the beginning. And I sometimes will read someone's 6th book or 7th book to see if they manage that and to see if I can learn anything when I'm reading about how they've handled, you know, a book that, you know, although it's a series, should be regarded as a standalone.
Barry?
Yeah, I would say you can jump in at any point in the DCI Logan series. That's each book should stand alone as its own story. I think you will enjoy it more if you jump back to the start, which is A Litter of Bones, the first book, and that introduces the characters. But yeah, jump in at any point, anyone that takes your fancy, go for that. Or there's also Northwind, which is the first Bob Hoon spin-off book, and you could jump in at that as well. I would probably recommend doing the Logan books first, but neither one spoils the other, so it's entirely your call, really.
Bill?
Yes, I mean, I try to make all of mine stand alone, and I mean there are themes that follow through the whole series, but I try to make sure that each individual book has enough backstory to explain things like that without actually giving anything away, so it doesn't spoil it if someone does start in the middle and then move back to the front.
The inevitable question that was bound to appear, Kaz wants to know if anyone on the panel this year is attending Harrogate's.
No, I'm not. No. I never go anywhere because I live in the middle of nowhere and it takes ages to get anywhere.
I can understand that. And when you've moved away from all the people, you don't necessarily want to go to where everybody is all at once.
Yeah, I try and avoid people as much as possible. Yeah, I spent kind of 10 years when I was doing kids' books, traveling all over the country and doing school events and festivals and all that stuff. And it's quite nice not to do that now. You know, it's quite nice just to stay at home.
I will say that if anybody wants a bit of an account of one of your events, go and have a scroll through your Twitter. Because I was howling laughing.
Yeah, the Twitter moment of my worst ever school visit which was in Manchester, by the way, as we discussed.
We discussed it privately, and it'll stay that way.
Yeah. That was an interesting day.
It was as much as I felt for you reading the Twitter thread, I howled laughing.
Well, I'm glad
some
my
of the
misery
similar experiences
brought you happiness. Yeah.
Bill?
I'd like to, but I'm not sure I'll be able to manage it.
To be fair, me and Kaz are going for the day. There'll be no accommodation, and all of those things. It's we're doing it on the cheapest way we can.
Oh, right.
Really. So
wrong with that.
And Jude?
I'm not sure yet. I've bought this site tickets, which, as people probably know, is this kind of most cost-effective way to do it. JD's touched on this. I'm what you call like an extrovert introvert.
Yeah.
So I find those kind of book festivals and social events kind of agonizing, really. I mean,
oh, yes.
There's a reason people are writers, and it's quite often because they're very happy in their own company. They just want to get lost in their own world. So if I ever am at an event, please come and talk to me, because I see sometimes on social media people say they're going and they're not going with anyone and they feel shy, etc., and then they don't talk to writers because they're inhibited. But seriously, most writers are probably like me, and inside they're dying having to be out in a public space.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm palpitating as we speak.
I'm doing a bit better today than I usually do. After doing a couple of live in-person things this week, I feel like it's calmed me down a bit. So long may that last.
I mean, the video I did, the promotional video last week for this, it took about 6 or 8 takes.
You worry too much.
Because I kept forgetting who I was and what I was supposed to be doing.
That's just part
I forgot to do it.
I keep looking on my phone because on the side here, all I can see for most people is Facebook.
Well, the bridge of the Starship Enterprise where you are, so all these different buttons and, bells flashing and things.
I'm getting used to it now, but Kaz and my husband are my tech people. So if I have a panic, I can get one of them.
Ah, right.
So it's quite, or one of my kids, let's be honest.
Yeah.
You'll think I'm getting on a bit. I'm not that old, but Luann Schaefer says, DCI Logan and Robert Hoon are my faves. I miss them being in my daily lives now that I've read them all currently on the market.
Oh.
Listen to all the books versus reading. Perfect for drive to work and drive home every day. This means the narration is as important as the content, and loves her some Angus King too.
Angus King's the narrator. Yeah, he's fantastic. Angus King is brilliant. He's when I was looking for people to narrate the books, I asked for a Scottish accent. I asked for people who had a Scottish accent to submit auditions, and what I got was about 100 Americans trying to do Scottish accents, like "Och, the new." It was awful. And then, so none of them were any good. And then I just went kind of hunting for, I thought, right, who's going to be a good narrator? And I listened to loads of audiobooks. And I found Angus King, and I immediately went, him, he's the guy. So I got in touch, and he did it. And then, so we produced the DCI Logan audiobooks. We produced them ourselves under our own little publishing company that my wife and I run. And the Hoon books were picked up by Audible. Audible did them themselves. But we kind of strongly recommended that they go with Angus King as well, because there would have been a mutiny, I think, amongst the audiobook listeners if it wasn't him. So he's great. He has so many voices at his kind of disposal. And when he does Hoon, he's got a really guttural voice for Hoon. And I'm sure by the end of each book, his throat must be like just hanging in tatters, just bleeding and raw because the voice he does for him. But he's fantastic. So thank you for that. It was a lovely comment.
And so while we're on the subject, let's say what formats all of your books are available in. So any other Audible, large prints, any so obviously all available in ebooks.
Yeah, mine are in Kindle, paperback. They're paperback on Amazon and in all bookshops. They're in, the latest one's in Morrison's at the moment. It's on special on there, and audio as well.
Jude?
Yeah, normal ebook, paperback, hardback. I'm not sure if people buy hardbacks once the paperback is out. I've never been sure of that. But yeah.
I think some people like them. Some people like collecting hardbacks, yeah, but it's definitely a kind of niche thing compared to the paperbacks.
Yeah. I think if you're going to buy a hardback, you tend to buy it, straight away, don't you? Because you can't wait for the all things to come into paperback.
I do have some that are a mixture of ebook, paperback, and hardback, because if I'm waiting for a book, I buy whichever version's out first.
Yeah.
So my Mark Billingham shelf is looking a bit odd because everything's at different sizes. So it's one thing that bugs me that I keep thinking, oh well, I'll fix the gaps at some point. But I don't.
I was surprised when I saw my hardback, because I had 2 memoirs out a few years ago, and they just came out in paperback, and so I assumed everything was in paperback. So I was like, oh, when I got a hardback.
Bill, what formats are all of your books available in?
Ebook and paperback at the moment.
Audio something that you're interested in the future, or is that a bit, with being an indie, is that something?
Interested, but it's probably a project for the future, I think, rather than at the moment I'm sort of concentrating on trying to do another one, so that's where all the energy is going.
As well it should be, one thing at a time. Anita Louise Robertson says Hoon is an awesome character, broken but everyone can relate to parts of him, which is a lovely comment.
Yeah, very nice, thank you.
Lots more hellos. Selena Armitage has had some military experience herself and enjoys books that show vulnerabilities of forces as well as the tough guy action. So there's something else that you have to get right with this balance in the books. How much thought does that take? Do you think ahead? Do you plan that? Or is that something that comes naturally, Jude?
Well, my external vulnerability of my hero is the fact that he's actually carrying around a bullet in his brain, which is like a literal thing, which means if he kind of sneezes wrong or obviously gets into a fight situation, he could literally die at any second. And it took a bit of time because the kind of thing with an external wound is they still have to be capable of action. The internal wound is interesting because that kind of develops as you write, in my experience. As you get to know your character better, the backstory kind of fills in itself. I'm not one of these people who works out the character in tremendous detail before they start writing, although I do work out the plot, which I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can see all my cards, to one side. So that
I was admiring that. I do like a cardboard.
That gives away the fact that I spend way too much time with postcards and not enough writing. That means that I plot, rather than kind of pants it out. But ironically, some people will do page after page after page on character before they start thinking about the plot. So you can kind of come at it, any way. I think providing you keep thinking, you're going to get to the essence of a person. And nobody's entirely whole. Nobody's 100% sorted. All of us, carry wounds as we go through life. You've got to kind of tap into what is it that's unique and special about, your guy on the page.
Barry?
Yeah, I think so. For my Hoon books, he first appears in the second DCI Logan novel, and he was just a sort of almost like a placeholder character. He wasn't really a real character. He was just sort of horrible boss with a name, and he was for the next few books he was just this horrible sweary character that shouted a lot. And I never really thought much more than that about him. And then I started getting a lot of emails from people saying they really liked this character. And I got a lot of emails from people saying they absolutely despised the character and would literally skip over his bits when he appeared. But thankfully, more so, we're enjoying him. And I kind of set myself a little challenge of trying to humanize him and trying to take this sort of this two-dimensional monster basically and turn him into a character. I thought, can I write a whole book with this guy as the main character and have people actually rooting for him while still remaining true to the character that he is, still making him this foul-mouthed, alcoholic, violent, angry, unpleasant Scottish man? Can I get people to root for him? And so over I think books 7 to 11 in the Logan series, I started to try and humanize him a little bit. So he would do things that were maybe not entirely selfish, and kind of bit by bit became a bit more sort of a character you might possibly empathize with. And then in his first solo book, I put him in a situation where he was doing kind of a bit against his will, a bit reluctantly, but he was being forced to do this good thing, basically. And this is the daughter of a friend of his from his army days, and goes missing in London, and the police she's kind of in her 20s, the police don't care, and he goes down and tries to find her. And you kind of get to see all the layers that have turned him into this monster, basically, and that kind of peels those away bit by bit. So, but to start with, I had no thoughts on him other than here's a man who's going to swear a lot and be angry. And then I just, like Jude was saying, I just kind of uncovered his character as I went along. By the way, if you are interested in coming up with insults and bad language similar to those he uses, there is a Bob Hoon insult generator on my website. If you go to link...
Oh, have I missed
Right.
Have you seen it? If you go to link.jdkirk.com/insult me, and you will click a button and it will automatically generate an insult for your that he'll hurl at you.
All right.
Genius.
Great idea.
So, yeah.
Bill, so talk to us about the vulnerabilities and how you write that within about Danny.
Well, I try and I don't write massive character detail, but I like to get the main elements, a bit of background, a bit of their nature, and that sort of thing. And then I think if you can get that pretty much right, then you've got a template that gives you an indication of how any one individual will react in any given circumstance. And that obviously develops. I mean, some characters who are only sort of briefly in earlier versions evolve, and the same principle applies. But as Jude said, you've got to sort of think about it. You can't sort of start at one point and just keep on going. You have to sort of assess each circumstance as it occurs.
I'm just chuckling to myself. Judith Graham saying she loves the group, read the first JD Kirk book, and now 2 new authors for her to research. The library that she works in will have no crime stock soon. That is what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Anita Louise Robertson says Northwind is outstanding with a thumbs up.
Oh, thanks very much, Anita.
And Donna Morfitt can't wait to meet me and Kaz at Harrogate. So we'll see you on the Saturday, Donna. Do you have any more word on your DCI Logan books being dramatised? So let's ask all of you about potential possibilities for seeing something on a screen somewhere. So we'll go to you first, JD. I've not used the same name for you at all.
No, that's fine.
Really just
that's fine. I generally just know, I'll just answer to most things. Not much I can really say at the moment is that, but there are things ongoing with the DCI Logan series, and that's all I can really say on the matter at the moment.
That's okay. Come back to us once you've got some news.
Yeah, once I can say more, then I shall say more.
Bill, Jude, either of you, anything in the pipeline?
No, I mean it's just a dream at the moment. I mean, I still think it would work well, and comparatively inexpensively as well. I mean, most of mine are set in and around Brighton on the south coast, so although it's getting a bit crowded down there film-wise, but no, I mean it'd be lovely if it happened, but at the moment, nothing in the pipeline.
Jude?
No, I wish. I'm open to offers if there's an offer out there. No, my first memoir, Wife in the North, was optioned by a TV company, but nothing ever came of it, unfortunately.
Janet Nuttall wants to know, when you're writing a series, do you have a life plan for your characters which occur chronologically throughout the series? Who wants to tackle that one first?
I don't plan anything. I don't really plan much at all. I mean, I wouldn't say I've got a plan for the characters. So I'm surprised. I think a big part of it, the part that keeps me writing, is that I'm quite often as surprised as the readers are. So things happen in my books that, like I know the plot, I know who done it in a murder or whatever, but where the characters themselves end up sort of emotionally maybe and on their own sort of personal journey, where that takes them in each book, can be a bit of a surprise to me. So something happens in this book which I didn't expect at all, and will change the lives of all the characters really. But I wasn't expecting it. And then even silly things like in one of the books, DCI Logan kind of acquires a dog, which is found at a crime scene, and it was really just going to be for that one book. But then I kind of quite liked him having a dog by the end of it. And then the amount of emails I got from people saying, he must keep this dog, do not harm this dog in any way, that I kind of decided to keep it on. But in every book he attempts to get rid of the dog as like a little running joke, and no one will take the dog on because they think it looks thick.
You think it looks thick?
Looks thick, yeah. I think that's the it looks a bit daft, I think they say. I can't remember. But yeah, they all think the dog looks like an idiot, so no one will take the dog. So he's now stuck with this dog called Taggart.
Bill?
Yes, it's interesting that most readers seem to be quite happy with blood and death everywhere for human beings, but don't like animals being touched in any way, which is understandable. Yeah. But yes, with mine, I mean, there was no sort of grand plan in mind. I mean, the 7 Danny Lancaster started out as a series of 4, and in the 4th one, I started to sort of dismantle things a bit, thinking that would be the end of it. But then came back to it with the 5th one, God Lives Cuckoo, which is actually my personal favourite. So there's no master plan. There's no overall. It's basically I go where it takes me.
Jude?
My guy started off really cold and acting as an assassin for an extra-governmental agency, and he's kind of warmed up considerably and opened up, and has kind of acquired a kind of family in a way, you'd call it, of sidekicks and friends, which obviously impacts on his character growth and development. I don't have a kind of end target in my head for him. What I do have, because I'm a former journalist with the Sunday Times and Channel 4 News and Newsnight, so I've got a real interest in current events and politics, etc. So I am aware of the themes, the context, the kind of overall plot that I'm looking to write about. So yeah, I've got a list of areas where he's going to go.
So we talked a little about not letting humour get in the way of the tension, so that you're not suddenly ripped from the story and that drama. How do you manage the pacing of the books to make sure that it's not dropping off too much and it's not rising too quickly? How do you balance the tension and the drama? So Barry, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say on that, I never hold back with the humour in my books. There's definitely an argument there that it can kind of puncture the tension, but I think humour can add to the tension as well. I think there's humour in that sort of nervous giggle that there might be a killer around the corner. My books are, I'd say there's humour on every page, and even at the darkest moments. And I think that's when humour can work better than ever at that moment, when you are so tense and so uptight and so terrified of what's going to happen. Then a joke can relieve that, but at the same time, but still keep you intrigued. I always say one of the time that my dad and my sister and I, the kind of time I think we laughed more than ever before, was at my mum's funeral, which sounds terrible, but that was our way of getting through that terrible time. So I have humour throughout all my books. And as I say, it wasn't intentional. It just happened. That's the way I write. That's just going to happen. So I use humour throughout, but kind of keeping the tension up. For me, it's something interesting. Bill said earlier on there, that thing of having lots of things happening, but equally important is that bit between those things happening. So if it is just, exciting thing, it stops being exciting. You need that sort of exciting thing, bit of a breather, and you get to know your characters and see how your characters have changed from that thing, or how their plan has been affected by that thing. And then the next exciting thing happens, and it's more exciting, and then we have a breather again, and it builds up that way. It isn't that just a succession of events. That kind of ebb and flow of it is really important for giving the reader a chance to go, okay, where am I? What's happened? Regroup, and then move on with your characters to the next kind of exciting moment.
Yeah, sort of roller coaster effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think those breaks are vital. Otherwise, it's just a series of overwhelming things happening.
No, you're right. I mean, obviously, if you can't keep ramping tension up continuously without.
Yeah, it needs to break. You need that moment, and that's where I think humor works well. Is that you can build up that moment, and then you have that humor break, and then you building up again. I think that works well.
Yeah, otherwise the readers might explode.
Yes, we don't want that.
No, absolutely not.
Messy business.
Exploding readers, a bad idea.
Yeah, we only like that within the pages.
Yeah.
Jude, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one actually, because you want the characters to have a breath, but you don't want to lose them. And I think most writers probably you do the pacing quite naturally. I think it just comes out, and you get a feel for where it's slow, and you get a feel for where you want it to kind of move up a level. But at the same time, I don't know about Bill and JD. At the end point, I'll break it down again, chapter by chapter, and I'll go in and I'll see if there's another point where I can do another twist or do a reveal, or whether I can ramp it up a bit. So I will look at it at the end to see, with a view to the pacing. So it's organic, but at the same time, I am then imposing something artificial and going over it again just to see if I can nail the pacing.
We've had a question from Penny Willow. Do you all have daily word counts you stick to, or a number of hours you work, or what is do you write every day? How do you go about it? So Barry?
Hi again, Penny. I use a bit of software called Pacemaker, and what it does is basically I say, right, this book is going to be 90,000 words. Let's say I want to be finished, 2 months from now. I punch those details in, and Pacemaker says, okay, in that case, you need to write this number of words every day. And if you want a weekend off, then you have to write this number of words every day. So it does loads of calculations for you. So I generally aim for about 3,000 words a day when I'm writing. I generally write, I then take kind of 2 weeks off to plan the next book. And when I say plan the next book, I've been planning it for several weeks generally, but that 2 weeks is to really get it written down in a kind of beat by beat what's going to happen. And then I will start writing again. So when I'm writing, it's kind of a minimum of 3,000 words a day. And over the weekend, I'll generally do kind of 3,000 between the 2 days. So I kind of write a bit less at the weekend, but I still write. And partly that's because it's my job and I have to do it. But even if it wasn't my job, I've always written. I've written since I was kind of able to write. I wanted to be an author from when I was 9, and I've written every day since then. So it's just a thing that I would do even if it wasn't a job.
I've just written down Pacemaker. I'm going to have a look at that.
Yeah, Pacemaker. I'll find the actual website address right now when we're chatting.
Bill, how about you? What's your writing process?
I don't have a rigid program, but I normally aim for a minimum of 3,000 a day. The best I ever managed was 8,500 in a day once, and that was by a swimming pool in Crete. But I was tempted to move out and set up by the swimming pool indefinitely, but that didn't work out. But no, about 3,000. And if I'm working, probably 7 days a week.
Wow. That is a lot of words. Jude, how about yourself?
Was that me? Sorry, you cut out a
Yeah.
little. Yeah, I don't write as fast as these guys. I wish I did. I do an awful lot of research for my books because some of them include quite technical stuff like artificial intelligence, lethal autonomous weapons, radio astronomy, stuff like that. And again, I think that having been a journalist, I kind of want to learn as well as write. And there's an awful lot of the writing process which isn't necessarily writing, which is stuff like editing, going over. So I wouldn't beat myself up if I spent the day editing. And sometimes, you know, it's not that your word count goes up, but you've really been in the zone and material ends up way better. I would like to write faster. I'm intrigued by Pacemaker.
So it's pacemaker.press. I've just looked it up.
All right.
Pacemaker.press.
When I am literally, you know, just kind of writing and trying to get through, I would be happy if it was a good quality 1,000 words. Very happy if it was a good quality 1,500. Yeah, so I wish that I wrote as fast as these two.
I think that's really important, though. A lot of people will kind of go, well, you know, I can't possibly hit those numbers. When I started, my first series that was picked up by HarperCollins, I only had 10 minutes a day to write because I was before, you know, I had a full-time job. I had a kind of new child in the house, new baby in the house. And I had I wrote it in 10-minute snatches throughout the day. And everyone can find 10 minutes in a day. You know, we always go off no time, but just don't look at Facebook for those 10 minutes or don't watch EastEnders or whatever. Everyone can find 10 minutes in the day. Get up 10 minutes earlier. So I wrote that book, 10 minutes a day, and HarperCollins picked that up and asked me to write 6 of those books in the series. So, and that's now being developed for a TV series with CBS in the States, and that was done in 10 minutes a day. So you don't have to hit the big word counts to kind of make it as an author. You just have to get those words done one way or another.
I think you've just got to find the way that works best for you. I mean, there's a way of writing where
you have to be comfortable.
Yeah, you can write on your phone, write on your laptop, you know, write in a notebook, and you're writing the same chapter, but literally every 10 minutes, or you know, if you're parked up waiting for a child, you keep writing it. I've tried. I get RSI, so I've tried dictating it, but I got a different kind of style from the dictation. I could get down words. I mean, my word count went through the roof dictating. But I was getting shorter sentences, and my editor kind of went, "This is too choppy." But obviously, I was thinking in a much more condensed version, you know, than I do when I actually, you know, get to the page and the keyboard. I think you just got to find the natural, and people do find the natural way to deliver words.
I mean, it's getting out of your own way first, isn't it? Not overthinking it and just doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I've done my last couple. I mean, I used the first few were written in an upstairs office. The last few, a bulk of them have been done in coffee shops and pubs and things using a tablet or my phone. And I've got this lovely little foldable Bluetooth keyboard that's about the size of a paperback book and a fraction of the weight, and it just folds out, connects up, and you're away. You've got a proper keyboard.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah,
they're really good.
David Gilchrist has asked, Bill, will we see any more Danny Lancaster books? Which obviously you've talked a little bit about the one that you're writing at the moment. So I'm going to ask you all what you are working on at the moment. So, Bill, let's start with you.
Right. Well, I am working on new Dannies, but I have 2 very good excuses why it's going very slowly. One of them's 3 years old, that's Theo, and one of them's 1 year old, that's Jack. I've got 2 grandsons who are...
I did think you were going to say your grandsons.
Enormously distracting and occupying more time than they should, but I'll just wave just in case they're there. Oh, Jack! Oh,
Jack and Theo.
But yes, I mean, I've got another Danny in the pipeline, although I said I'm wrestling a bit with the toxic masculinity issue. And I've also got the idea for a standalone that I've been tinkering with for quite a while. And neither have reached the stage yet where I'm sure which one is going to, you know, take the lead and become the full-time project. But, there will be more, yes, definitely.
Glad to hear it. Jude?
Well, I'm working on it. Well, I'm waiting for a copy edit to come back to me. I'm thinking about the fourth Michael North, and again, I've got a standalone that needs to rewrite, and also I've kind of started, but I'm playing around with another standalone as well. It's important to keep writing. I think whatever stage you are in the process, writing something.
JD?
Yeah, I have. So the new Logan book comes out this month now, so May the 10th, and then the third Hoon book comes out on July the 12th, and then there was another Logan book in the future, September, I think. The next one's out. September the something. So I'm always working on something. I'm always writing something. With some screenplay stuff happening as well, but book wise, that's what's coming out this year. Well, there will be another book as well, which will come out in the very end of November, which is going to be a Christmas themed book that brings together. This is an exclusive. I've not told anyone else this yet.
You love an exclusive.
It brings together the Hoon series and the Logan series for a sort of big, almost a Christmas special, I suppose.
You can almost hear the squeals from the audience.
It's going to be It's really. I had an idea for it because there were going to be 3 Hoon books, and one's called Northwind, one's called Southpaw, and one's called Westward, and everyone kept pointing out that there needs to be an East, and I couldn't think of an East, and then the idea came to me kind of late one night, and it made me laugh quite hard, and then I thought, from there I figured out what it could be, and it involves all the characters from the Logan and the Hoon series sort of together.
Quite a lot of work on that.
Cool.
Can I ask you, JD, if you don't hit your daily target on your pacing program, does it generate its own insult?
No, it's a good idea though. Maybe I should do that. Yeah, I go and manually type one into myself. And
I actually thought you were going to say, does it readjust? But you completely spun off on a different direction.
Yeah,
but does it readjust the figure if you miss any?
It can do. Yeah, you can set it to do all kinds of stuff. You can set it to do that. You can set it to so it'll adjust based on how many you've done that day. If you do more, you'll have to do less in future, or you can set it to say the same, and it shows you all fancy graphs and charts and things. And,
I fear that Pacemaker is going to become my new Wordle, my new distraction.
It is good, but it has really helped me, prepare me. And David J. Gatward, who's also writes the Grimm series, he started using it as well. He's found it really useful too. So I do recommend it. I'm not in any way endorsed by Pacemaker, I should say. I just found it really useful.
We've missed one obvious question. What drew you all to thriller writing? Was going to be one of my opening questions, but we've had so many good audience questions and there's still some left. So, Jude, do you want to go first?
Well, mine are action adventure thrillers with some politics and some tech. I was uncomfortable writing about dead women or missing kids. And personal thing, I just didn't want to spend my time doing that. I will read, some books with those at the heart of them, but when you're writing, you've got to be prepared to spend time with your characters.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to be. I wanted it to be something I enjoyed doing. And I'm a former political journalist, so it's a natural thing for me to have politics in a book, and that means a kind of action thriller is a natural place for me to go. And I like some excitement. I like the old political movies of the 70s, the Manchurian Candidate, and that one with Warren Beatty, was it The Palace View, etc. I mean, I love those kind of movies, and I think we're very influenced by the visual world these days, even as writers.
JD?
So I never really intended to write thrillers or crime fiction. I wasn't a huge crime or thriller reader, really. I'd been writing a comedy sci-fi series called Space Team for about 3 or 4 years, which was doing really well. And then I had just one idea for a crime novel. My daughter and I were out walking our dog, who's knocking about under the table here somewhere, out in this kind of forest about kind of 9 miles north of where we live. And the dog ran off into the trees. And I told my daughter, she was about 6 or 7 at the time, told her to wait and not go anywhere. And I was going to find the dog. Went in, found the dog, came out, and my daughter had vanished. And I immediately had that sort of panicky feeling, that sort of panic attack when you're going, oh no, I've lost a child and my wife's going to kill me for this. And then I started kind of shouting for her, and it turned out she was hiding. She was just hiding behind a bush, thought this would be hysterical. But as she could hear me getting really kind of, worried and scared and upset, she thought, oh no, I better stay hiding in case I get into trouble for this. So she just stayed hiding for longer. But eventually the dog found her, and it was all fine, and we had a laugh about it. But kind of driving home, I thought, well, what would have happened if she had been missing? What would have happened next? And by the time I got home, I'd plotted out the start of this crime book. And I was doing a talk in Glasgow, and I was on a panel with L.J. Ross, who I'm sure most crime readers will know. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned I had this idea for a crime novel, and she said, you should write it. And it was her and her husband that were there, and said, you should definitely write it. And then they're so lovely and so encouraging. I was going to the London Book Fair kind of 6-7 months later, and I was going to be in a panel with her again. And they were both so encouraging that I didn't want to let them down. So I started writing the book like a month beforehand. So I had some chapters. So I've done some chapters. Look, and they kind of read it and really liked it, and it kind of gave me the encouragement to finish it. So I finished that first one, put that out, and it immediately started outselling everything else I've ever written. Kind of 80 to 1. It was insane. It's over 2 million copies sold now, I think, which is mad.
Wow, that's a lot of books. It's even more than I own. So I'm losing my microphone. Donna wants to know the worst and best advice you've been given as authors.
I tend to just ignore most of it. I don't think I've had any kind of direct advice that I can think of. For me, what's been the kind of life-changing thing for me is for 10 years I was working with traditional publishers, HarperCollins and Penguin and loads of them, and the advice was that that's the best way to kind of be successful and to find readers and all that stuff. And for me, the big change came when I started publishing my own work. Really, when I set up my own publishing imprint, that's when I started kind of selling, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands more books than I sold with HarperCollins, for example. So I think just taking charge of your own, no one is as invested in your book as you are, really. So I think taking charge of your own career and your own writing is really important. So for me, I think I would say the worst advice I got was try really hard to get traditionally published, because all those years I spent trying to get published and then working with publishers, I could have been doing something different myself. But the traditional publishing works really well for lots of people, and it just didn't work particularly well for me. So I think it's back to that thing that you were saying, Jude, is finding what works for you. So take on as much advice as is given, but kind of learn to ignore what doesn't feel right to you, I suppose.
Bill, we didn't actually. I got distracted by a very, very big bee.
Oh, right.
A huge bee outside my window that I can hear with the windows closed through the double glazing.
How long is the window closed?
Big bee. So I'm just checking. I was checking the window was closed. What drew you into thrillers? And then we'll go back to the question JD's just
answered. Nothing very deep, really. It was just a sort of an urge to live vicariously, really. I could sit in an armchair while enjoying car chases and leaping from tall buildings and things like that. It was just, I suppose Well, I mean, in the early stages, I mean, I was writing when I was a kid, although it was nothing very exciting. But you could just invent your own world and your own activities, and that has hopefully refined down into Danny now.
And how about advice? For anybody else?
Nothing springs to mind really. I mean, I think it tends to be a very individual thing for everyone. Everyone does things different ways and has different priorities. I mean, JD's point about conventional publishing or otherwise is a good one, because I think a lot of people, can spend a lot of time banging their head against the brick wall in that direction. So yeah, I think it's very. I mean, I can't think of any advice on the spot, but I mean, you really got to make decide for yourself, weigh up the options, and decide what fits your circumstances and your objective there.
That is great advice that you gave without trying to give advice.
No, yeah. You can edit that bit out.
And Jude?
Best advice. I'll say there's two bits of best advice. One is something we talked about earlier, which is don't get lost in the process. And that can be really easy to do because it's quite an overwhelming thing to do, is to write a book. Don't overthink it. And connected with that in terms of best advice, it's only a little trick this, but if you find you're struggling to get into your writing, there's something to be said for sitting down at the desk and planting both feet very firmly on the ground, and then just thinking about, it's only a little trick, little device, thinking about kind of rooting yourself in the earth and just taking just a moment, really feeling yourself. You've just anchored yourself, and then begin just starting. Because frankly, no book gets written without you sitting somewhere and cracking through the words. And worst advice, well, again, it's a bit of a cliche this, but it's, write what you know, because I think it's good to write what you don't know, because then it's fresh to you. And if you come to it fresh, it's going to be fresh on the page.
And on that note, I'm going to ask you all to give us a reminder, a recap of your books, and that is it. We are done. Our hour is up.
Good Lord, that flew by.
Wow.
That did fly by. You're all fantastic guests to have. You can all come again. JD, let's start with you. Quick recap of the books.
The DCI Logan series starts with The Litter of Bones, and the North Wind, which is the first Hoon book. You can find it, if you go to jdkirk.com, you can find all the information there.
Thank you. Bill?
Yes, as I mentioned at the beginning, 7 Danny Lancasters. Whoops, that's one of them, which can be found at billtodd.co.uk.
And Jude?
Yeah, my website at the minute is judithoreilly.com, and keep an eye out for my next book, which is due out in October, Sleep When You're Dead.
Thank you all so much. Thank you to all the members as well for joining in.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been absolutely thrilled to have you for our thriller panel.
Thank you
no pun intended. And we look forward to reading the next books as they all come out. So I'll stop distracting you and let you get on with it.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Cheerio.